Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen. So in today's video, we're going to be reacting to Timwai's speech. And in this speech, he tries to explain where whiteness comes from.
Right, when you think of today's world, obviously when you look at the hierarchy or how the system has been placed, it has made us to believe that white people rank on top of other races, and then there's all these other people, Asians, who Africans, right? But where exactly did this come from? Because even as Jen Elliott says, this is another activist, she normally says race was not a construct that used to be back in the days, you know.
And for this system to work so well and for it to survive or to have survived for this long, who are the exact people who are benefiting from racism?
Right.
Have you ever asked yourself that question? Who are the exact people who are benefiting from racism?
Right.
Let's watch this video and then we come back and talk about it.
If you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick and it's worked brilliantly. See, prior to the mid to late 1600s in the colonies of what would become the United States, there was no such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term really ever before then. In fact, in the old countries of Europe, we had spent most of our time killing each other. We didn't love each other. We weren't one big happy family. The side of my family that comes from Scotland, hell, they didn't even worry about fighting people outside of Scotland. Highlanders and lowlanders just fought the hell out of each other. So there was no white race, but in the colonies of what would become the United States, what did we see in the 1660s, 1670s? We began to see that Africans of indentured servant status, many of them not enslaved yet, they were not necessarily permanently enslaved. Some were, others were indentured like many poor Europeans for periods of 7 to 11 years. They could work off their indenture and then they would be free labor technically. Realized, as did the white indentured servants, the Europeans who hadn't even been called white yet, that they had a lot of things in common, like the fact that they were all getting their clock cleaned by the elite. And so they would get together more than our history books taught us, to foment rebellion against the elite, to try to get a better deal for themselves on the basis of economic necessity and economic justice. And what did the elite do? When you see that you're outnumbered by black and white folks who are penniless, landless, peasants, you have to do one of two things. You either have to kill them all, but you can't do that because who's going to work? Rich folks weren't going to. They had to get poor people to work. The whole point was to be a person of leisure back in those days. That was the goal, was not to work. So you couldn't kill them all. You didn't want to kill them all. You had to do the work yourself. You had to build your own levee, build your own house. No. Pick your own tobacco, harvest your own cotton. No, we're not going to do any of that. So you can't kill them, but you can co-opt them. And so the elite in Virginia, for example, in the colony, begins to give certain carrots to people of European descent, saying things like, you know, we're going to let you own a little land. Not much, but just a little. And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. Now you're free labor. And by the way, once you're free labor, you get 50 acres of land just because you're free labor, see? So we're going to cut you in on this deal. We're going to let you enter into contracts. We're going to let you testify in court. And here's the best of all. We're going to put you on the slave patrol to keep those people in line, right? The idea was you're still going to get your clock clean. We still don't like you. We still aren't going to really empower you or change your economic subordination, but we're going to make you honorary members of this team, and you're going to help us keep those other people down. And so they got a little taste of power, and it did effectively divide and conquer those coalitions. Those rebellions began to stop almost instantly. Fast forward to the Civil War era, you have rich white folks in the South, where I come from, standing up and openly admitting that the reason they're prepared to secede from the Union, and the only reason they ever articulated publicly, ever, was to maintain and extend slavery and white supremacy not only where it already existed, but into the newly acquired, that is to say, stolen territories from Mexico to the west. That was what they said. Now we lie about it. We say it wasn't about slavery, that it was about states' rights. Yes, the right of the states to keep and maintain slaves, exactly. But back then they had no shame, so they didn't try and cover it up. They openly said it, but once again, the rich didn't want to go do the work. Are you kidding? No. They're going to get poor people to go fight for them. And the poor folks didn't even own slaves. Now think, how do you get poor people who don't even own the shirt on their back, let alone slaves, to go fight to keep your slaves for you? You've got to convince them that their skin is more important than their economic interest. Because think about it, if I am a farmer who has to charge you $1 a day or $2 a week to work on your farm and harvest that tobacco or pick that cotton, but you can get a black person to do it for free because you own them, who's going to get the job? Not me. In other words, slavery actually undermined the wages and the wage base, the economic floor of the typical white working class or low income person. But they were told, if these people are freed, they're going to take your job. No, fool, they got your job. That's the point. And so at some level, again, working class white people being harmed by white privilege, relatively being advantaged, right? Being given a leg up, being given a membership to the club, but in absolute terms being kept economically subordinated by the very thing that gave them a sense of superiority. How's that for irony? Then in the present era, this hasn't stopped. This is not ancient history. Now we have people running around insisting that we should close the border with Mexico because if we don't, the wages of working class people will continue to fall. The implication being that the only reason workers are paid like crap in this country is because the border is open. But if you believe that, you would actually have to believe that if that border were closed, that all these owners of capital and industry would just say, oh, well, you figured us out. Here, it's a raise. Do we really believe that the only thing keeping bosses from paying people more is the presence of low-wage, medium, semi-skilled labor from south of this artificial border?
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. What is your opinion on this? Do you believe that racism was a tool that was used during colonization to create a system of slavery?
Yeah, and do you believe that racism was used to keep both white and black people poor? However, white people did not get the memo because apparently they took up racism and forgot to fight for their equal financial rights.
Right, it's why you find there will be well, let me just be respectful. There'll be an old white person in America somewhere, maybe let's say Georgia, the village part of Georgia, and he's there feeling so superior, and that is the same kind of person who will see a rich black person. Let's say, for example, although that kind of person they would never meet. Picture that kind of old man meeting with someone like Gabrielle Union, the actress, or Taraji P. Henson, and they're driving luxurious cars, things that this old man has never seen in terms of wealth in his life. What immediately kicks into this man's brain? Racism, because he believes he's better than those two black women, because that is what he's been told, right? But you guys, we all should realize that there are systems that were put in place not because to make you realize that you guys are better than or anything, but to keep us
distract you.
Exactly.
To distract you from the main goal.
Right.
Because you'll even find, as Timoy says, two neighborhoods, one predominantly in New Orleans, one predominantly white, the other predominantly black. They both are under the poverty line, and they're both the same when it comes to poverty. Yet when you go to the white side and ask them, why are you poor? They'll point to the black neighborhood and say that we are poor because the black people are taking all the opportunities.
Or
what
because they're doing criminal activities in the neighborhood. They're always mugging people, doing this and that. What they forget is they don't want to even
their government official accountable of how the neighborhood is like, you know.
Yeah, and you most probably find the situation that they are accusing the black people of all the bad things that happen in the neighborhood. What they're not mentioning is that there are even also white people who are caught doing criminal activities. And it's not that because of their two races that there's criminal activities in that area, but because the government has deliberately put their neighborhood that much suppressed, and they're using the said system so that they can use that to fight each other, instead of them coming together
and focusing on the main issue, which is that the government is not delivering to both of them, you know. So they're using their white supremacy and racism to control them. It's just kind of like the same thing here in Africa, how leaders have for the longest time used tribalism to separate people from coming together against or demanding for stuff from the government. So a while back they used to use tribalism so that they could get Kenyan citizens or Africans to vote people who aren't worthy of the seats, just simply because they all came from the same tribe. But what is happening is right now people are starting to have an awakening and waking up to the realization that leaders, it doesn't matter your tribe, a bad leader is just a bad leader. And this is why I try to ask Maren, what if both black and white Americans came together? Instead of fighting each other, they could fight for one another and demand service from the government, instead of white people trying to blame black people for all the misfortune that happens in their neighborhood.
I don't think that will happen, and should it happen, everybody would have to feel the pinch of the oppression, because for as long as white people are still benefiting from the systems that have been put in place, what do I mean? When you go to the hospital systems, for as long as you find a white person being treated better than a black person, you go for job interviews. For as long as you find more white people being hired and black people being denied the opportunity, that is what I mean. So long as there's a good group of white people who are still benefiting, all of them who are still benefiting from the system, it doesn't matter how poor they are, but they recognize the privilege their skin accords them. I don't think they're going to ever join the other race and fight for a better system for everybody. You understand?
Right. And at this point, sorry to say, forgive me, I'm begging you please, but sorry to say, I think most white people, cause the common civilian, there are many than the rich 1%, you know.
Right.
So sorry to say, but white America has been, they have accepted to be deceived through racism. So they don't see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
They really do not. They have their heads so far up their confusion that they don't smell the coffee outside of that, you know.
And you know, you guys, when they normally say someone somewhere is benefiting from a calamity, that is the case, you know, then they wouldn't care so long as the agendas are being, you know, driven, and the agendas are being met. Like Timwai said, during the olden days, people rose against the rich oppressors because they realized
they didn't rise against the rich oppressors. They were almost rising. And then the rich oppressors brought in racism and slavery to try and contain the white and black Americans from working together against them as white rich people.
And you keep asking yourself, why is it always that the history is repeating itself? It's because we all fail to learn every time that history does repeat itself. When you're this close to a revolution, you're blinded, and for sure you become blind to what the bigger picture, you know. Yeah, I don't know, you guys, let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. Personally, that's my take on it. You guys, there never used to be this construct of racism at some point, and you have to ask yourself why.
Whoever invented it, why they invented it, and it has successfully worked as they tailored it to work.
But does it really make a difference in your life? How well has it worked out for you, who is upholding that system that was introduced?
Right. So guys, let us know what you think of this episode in the comment section, and we'll see you on our next episode.